Truth Walk, the podcast, with your host, Alen Harris Sr. Episode 3, The Dark Blue Void. Hi, and thank you once again for returning to Truth Walk, the podcast. In this episode, I share an experience that took me some time to process. I'm actually still processing this years later, whenever it comes up. The way things are going these days, I suspect, like me, you're having a lot more shaking my head or what was I thinking or what were they thinking moments. Who knows why we do some of the bizarre things we do? This is one of mine. Over the years, I can think of several times I had an experience I didn't think I would survive. In this specific event, which I'd like to share now, I was so certain I was a goner, I said to myself, I guess this is how it all ends. I took in the reality of my circumstances. Then, with calm resignation and internal peace, I thought of God, wondering if He would deliver me, if He would save me. Next, I briefly thought of how my parents, my family, would be notified of my death or disappearance, and what the news would do to them. Finally, I braced for what horrible creature might swallow me. Yes, swallow me. You see, I was in the Mediterranean Sea, on the French Riviera, just off the coast of Nice, snorkeling. I had made the decision to see how deep I could dive and how long I could stay under. Really? What was I thinking? I began my descent. After a certain depth, the powerful rays of the sun became occasional flickers of light somewhere over my head. I got a little nervous, but I pressed on. A short time later, there was hardly any light at all. I could see darker and darker shades of the most beautiful blue. Resisting fear, resisting internal cowardice, or maybe even suppressing common sense, I made the decision I could go even deeper. It was getting more difficult to descend. I could feel the water pressure stressing my lungs, and exhaled a little air to sink faster. Glancing back, I could barely see the bubbles rising slowly toward the surface. I should have surfaced with them. I got this crazy notion at about 30 plus feet down, I might be nearing the bottom, since I wasn't too far out from the coast. But I was wrong. A few kicks and strokes later, I was so deep, all I could see was a blackish blue void in front of me. I usually had pretty good spatial awareness in the air or underwater, so I believed I was facing the shore. All of a sudden, the water temperature dropped. I felt a cold directional shift in the tide. I realized I might be being sucked into a vortex like an underwater cave somewhere below the Promenade des Anglais. I had to make a quick decision to try to reach the bottom and push off back to the surface or swim like HE double hockey sticks to the surface. I chose the latter. With all I had in me, I rotated my body in an attempt to reorient myself vertically, right side up in the water. By now, it was so dark, I could see neither light nor my last bubbles rising from my snorkel. And for a moment, I was completely disoriented. Without panicking, and resigned to whatever outcome God willed, I prayed almost unconsciously for Him to help me, to save me. I kicked, I stroked, and I was running out of air. Inside, I laughed at myself for having the crazy idea to attempt this feat in the first place. Yet I was also feeling grateful for the life I'd been able to live up to this very moment. Yes, I was very much alive in these moments. I exhaled what might prove to be my last breath. About the time I was fighting the temptation to inhale through my snorkel, which was certainly full of water by now, my hands broke the surface. Spitting the snorkel out of my mouth and taking a deep breath, I laid back into a smooth backstroke, staring towards a beautiful sunny sky. Then I noticed my snorkeling partner a short distance away swimming toward me in a bit of a frenzy. He exclaimed, "Where the heck were you, dude?" All I could say was, "Down there," as I looked down at the water. He explained to me how he had been repeatedly diving 15 to 20 feet looking for me and not able to find me and fearing I had drowned. He was amazed at how long I'd been under. I was too. It had been more than 5 minutes and likely closer to 6 before I surfaced. To be clear, at the time, I was in superior health, 7% body fat, cycling at least 20 to 30 miles a day, walking almost everywhere, swimming almost daily, and occasionally rock climbing, rappelling, and skiing. I'll tell you more about skiing the Alps another time. Even with all these physical advantages, I was using just a J snorkel with no valve, only cupping the top of the snorkel with my hand for that extra but short breath on the way down. In other words, I know I would have almost certainly drowned without some supernatural intervention. U.S. Army conditioning is great, and I tried to stay in shape, but I knew my limitations when I had reached them. It was in that brick wall moment I realized someone must be praying for me. Just a few seconds had prevented a tragedy, and that was all I needed. This time. I thank God for sparing me that day. I thank God every time I remember that day. It proved to be an amazingly beautiful day, but for 5 or 6 minutes, I had the humbling privilege of learning to appreciate life. Afterwards, my friend was unsettled, and so was I, but I kind of played it off. We both agreed we'd had enough snorkeling for the day. As I recount this story for you, I find myself wondering if any of you had similar or at least relatable experiences. Maybe you'll share one. From a biblical, scriptural perspective, I am persuaded that God heard my prayer, as well as all the prayers of those who were praying for me from the time I'd left the U.S. to head to France. My parents, grandparents, and even my great-grandmother had always made it their business to do so, and to them, I'm very grateful. They were righteous people then. Those who remain still are, and those who have passed were faithful until they were called home. This prayer walk is a major part of my family's legacy, and a part which I pray my children and every generation after them will preserve. In the Holy Scriptures, there's a book called Jonah, containing the story of a prophet who makes the unprofitable decision, pun intended, to disobey God. In the story, Jonah is swallowed by a very large fish, like a whale. Chapter 2 of Jonah speaks of how he prayed to God from inside the fish's belly. He rejoices how God heard his prayer and delivered him from a very probable and nasty death. While I was not swallowed by a whale like Jonah, when the water temperature had changed and I felt as if I was being sucked towards something, I was in that instant reminded of the story of Jonah. God was trying to tell me something. He had my attention. I suppose the main thing I received was not to be cowardly, but also not to be reckless with the life he has given me, nor foolish or downright stupid by taking unnecessary risks with my life. Yet in saving my life, God revealed something possibly even greater. He still had work for me. He still had unfinished plans for my life. He saved my life so I could fulfill my destiny. I haven't taken this for granted, and it's been a recurring theme in my life. Till this day, I am working on his plans as he reveals them to me. I hope in these discouraging and uncertain times you will realize that God has a plan for your life too. Please don't waste your life, or worse, throw your life away. We are all valuable to him, precious to him. He has kept you for a purpose. I challenge you to find it. You'll find it once you've found him. This story I have shared is true. As incredible as it may seem, I have told it to the very best of my recollection. Thank you for joining me once again for another Truth Walk. As I stated earlier, please share your thoughts and consider answering the accompanying survey questions. You are greatly appreciated. Your feedback is very important. God bless you.